Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
5 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, hoping and praying that your Thanksgiving was as great as you expected it to be. Simply this, what are you thankful for? As we continue to move through time and space with the Dr. Sky Experience. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, an opportunity with our great guest for you to get in on the conversation. This, as we continue talking about the great mysteries of the universe from astronomy, space, aviation, weather, we have celebrity guests and stories of American exceptionalism. To get in on the conversation, we encourage you to do that. The contact number is always 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. And if you'd like to send me an email, we do get some of these guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, the audience, for your guest suggestions. My email is just simply DRSKY, Dr. Sky, at WABCRadio.com. And why not listen to the many previous examples of the Dr. Sky Experience and all the other great hosts here 24/7 on 77 WABC. Simply going once again to WABCRadio.com and RedAppleAudioNetworks.com. Thanks to our helmsman, as we like to think of this, in the theater of the mind of radio, our navigators, we call them helmsmen, Bill and Tony, navigating this incredible signal, ladies and gentlemen, across the nation, around the world, and I'm sure with our topic this morning for 2 hours, with your participation, even out into the depths of the universe. As we move into the holiday season, ladies and gentlemen, news alerts all over the world talking about the great deception of the story of the UFOs. A recent film that's been out, and one that's, of course, very current in the mainstream media, is a documentary entitled The Age of Disclosure, a film by Dan Farah, visible on Netflix, that is, in certain theaters across the nation, and I'm sure around the world, receiving lots of praise. But then again, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen it, and as your humble host, I can say I have not at this point in time, but what's more important than that is someone who knows this particular story and has been documenting these particular stories himself. And with the brief introduction of our guest, Darcy Weir is a documentary filmmaker who over the past 2 decades has explored some of the most intriguing and thought-provoking subjects of our time, including UFOs, cryptids, and Bitcoin. With more than 15 feature-length documentaries available on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and Apple, his work continues to shed new light on these mysteries and make them more accessible to the general public. His latest project delves into the history of ESP and psychics, uncovering their fascinating connection to the UFO phenomenon and the broader story of non-human intelligence. And you can find his work, that is, also on Twitter and YouTube as @OccultJourneys and @DarcyWeirFilms on Instagram. His website, which we'll promote all the time we're here on the air with him, OccultJourneys.com. A special thank you to our special guest. Darcy, good morning. Thank you for being up with us as we continue to open people's minds and welcome them, that is, into our homes and into our minds. Thanks for being with us. How are you?
I'm great, Dr. Sky. Yeah, thanks for starting the morning with me.
Well, absolutely. And, the big attention, we're reading this all over. Even if you're a person, ladies and gentlemen, that has minimal interest in this subject, you're inundated with information about a new documentary, as I just promoted and mentioned, The Age of Disclosure, a film by Dan Farah. And you're fortunate enough to have seen it. And I just wanted to go right to it, just to get your analysis of what's in it, tell people about it, and your interpretation as one who delves deep into the subject of the UFO conspiracy.
Yeah, I think the film is a really good recap of all of the things that have been happening in terms of the cover-up over the decades, as well as what's going on in Congress with lawmakers and how these whistleblowers like Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, David Grush, and all of these, there's 34 high-ranking officials of some regard featured in the film, whether that's an individual who's from the FAA that says these are a flight risk, intelligence members,
yes,
military members, scientists. It's a pretty wide gambit, and then congressmen and congresswomen. So I can talk about the film and what they cover, but shoot away any questions you have about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear your general impression, because reading different reviews, I don't always believe everything I read, especially on the internet. Many people say they like it. Many people say it's, simply pay-per-view. And some say, not necessarily happy with it in their opinion, they're describing it as, well, another, moneymaker for people with things that we're not hearing any new information in there. So again, not to knock it, I haven't seen it, but your general assessment of what's in there, and maybe if there are some revelations that people don't know about or didn't know, tell us.
Well, I think, there's definitely new testimony that I've never heard of before. So, former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, he talks about working within the Air Force for decades and knowing of an Air Force UAP tracking special access program that the public doesn't even know about. So that was a pretty big one.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's somebody we should hang our hat on and say this is a credible individual. Colonel James Cobbs has a story about a fighter pilot encounter with a UAP, and how new testimony like this has never been heard before, and basically it's once you hear all of these pilots, like we've heard of Ryan Graves, we've heard of David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, they all lend to that too, but the mounting testimony, it's like when you watch this film, it's like a never-ending cascade of credible testimony. And I think that is something that's important, because you might watch most documentaries, and even some of mine, you're going to get 5, 6 people, couple different historical events. We'll dissect and really break down what happened. But in this, they've got like a whole army of people that are going on the record and saying this is real. You got Marco Rubio, you got James Clapper, Dan Crenshaw, Mike Gallagher, Mike Rounds, all speaking to this being a national security threat. Brett Feddersen from the FAA speaks to the national security and that it's, we're unequivocally not alone in the universe. Mike Gall, the quote from him, "If this is a foreign adversary, this is the greatest intelligence failure in history."
Interesting.
Yeah. And Fravor, he just talks about how this thing that he saw went from 0 to 200 miles per hour in, seconds, and what that would do to the human body would just annihilate it, turn it to paste. The G forces that would be experienced.
Right.
In
no
that.
human could survive that, obviously. That's interesting.
Yeah. So we're not, when we have credible pilots and witnesses like that are chasing these things and seeing technical feats that are beyond our comprehension, that's what has people convinced this is not of our planet, not of our world. Maybe this is non-human.
Yeah, it's amazing. Folks, if you're fascinated by this cover-up of the UFO story for well over 80 years, and you're just saying, wait a minute, if they told us that this was real, I wouldn't lose my composure. Or some people might say, well, I thought this was probable all along. But our very special guest, Darcy Weir, he's a documentary filmmaker. He's joined us before, and we're privileged and honored to have him here. Your contact and questions to get in on the conversation, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Darcy, this is fascinating because, again, we don't want to tell people they must go out and see something, obviously, if they feel they don't want to. But in the spirit of what you're revealing here, there is, testimony from some high-level individuals in there, to say the least, right?
Yeah, and, they talk about sort of the cultural conflicts that exist within, I'd say, the military environment as well as the intelligence environment. So basically anybody coming out of service to the Pentagon. They basically say, Jay Stratton and Lou Elizondo speak of the fact that they tried to take all of this credible evidence. Like, I'm guessing when they were part of this ATIP OSAP program, they cataloged and had all this proof that there was anomalous objects interacting with our planet, our military, yada, yada. And when they took it up to their higher-ups, their chain of command leadership said, this is the work of the devil, and those are demons.
Oh my God!
So you shouldn't be following this anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think what that speaks to is just kind of this religious stigma that's within that culture, that environment, and it's impeding the scientific study and progress of this going public and becoming more of a mainstream topic. So that was an interesting part of the documentary that they unveil.
Sure.
There's things that they highlight about the phenomenon that's observed by all these different walks of life. So they talk about the 5 observables that make something anomalous. So craft are often seen, with David Fravor's testimony of this thing going 0 to 200 miles in a second. That would be like that hypersonic, instantaneous acceleration behavior. So those are the 2 observables.
Exactly.
The top 2 there. Mm-hmm. They also talk about low observability of the phenomenon. So it seems like these things remain shrouded or cloaked most of the time because they're operating some kind of technology that seems to have this time or like reality bubble around it that allow them to fly around and not feel the effects of gravity and all that stuff. And due to the fact that it has this surrounding them, you don't even know they're in the sky.
That is amazing. Yeah, I mean, in addition to your great website, and I encourage people to go to occultjourneys.com and stay tuned with us, ladies and gentlemen. Your questions and comments are much appreciated here. That's what makes the Dr. Sky experience, I think, a complete circle. But also, Luis Elizondo's book, I was pretty impressed by the book, and people who may not seen the book or heard of it, it's called Imminent, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. Who was he? The former head of the Department of Defense's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Hard enough to say once. That's a lot of words. But I thought that was also rather revealing. And all the things that we're hearing about from you, our special guest, Darcy Weir, talking about the age of disclosure. In simple English, when the heck are we ever going to find out really what's going on here? I mean, that's the most ridiculous question any host could ask a guest, but it's the same question everybody out there is probably wondering, for so long, 80 years, and I can go back in history with you. We can. We have 2 hours here to discuss this and open our minds. Way back into the 1800s, way back into the days of the Egyptians. I mean, all this stuff seems to be an ongoing thing and such a tightly held, secret, supposedly, of what the real origin is. So, again, thanks for being here. But start off by telling us, I read your bio, and you, in your own words, what got you so fascinated by all this stuff? When? Just talk about that a minute, the personal side of yourself. Well, this is a great story.
I've always been interested in just science fiction and fringe ideas. Growing up as a kid, I watched X-Files and stuff like that. Sure. Later on in life, you're walking through Cole's Notes or one of these bookstores and you see a a book that is penned by who's the guy that created X-Files? His name is
it skips me right now. I apologize to the audience, but
the creator.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal television series. I mean, wow, that really opened up people's minds. But again, Darcy, really just stimulating our curiosity. But again, the answers to what the heck is behind all this. Well, everybody looks at government and says, for some reason, they don't want to tell us the truth about this. And well, please continue. It's just a fascinating story.
Yeah, I mean, what is behind all this? I think there's multiple things that are posed within the phenomenon. People think that it could be an interdimensional intelligence. It could be an extraterrestrial intelligence. That's the classic one, from another star, from another planet. Mm-hmm. There are problems with that. Obviously, to be interstellar, you'd have to figure out a way to travel faster than light. Because that's still too slow. You'd have to be living for thousands upon thousands of years to really make that journey worthwhile. But, then there's the X-ray tempestre model, which was posed. It's kind of the crypto-terrestrial theory that maybe there is something that is non-human that has lived here in our oceans or in our solar system since we have.
Now, that one really gets me going, because I think as we discuss this, so many of them in the congressional side have talked about this. Representative Burchett has talked about the possibility of what? More and more evidence from even our nuclear submarines and other nations' submarines seeing things traversed by them at speeds that are just unbelievable, considering, let's say, a nuclear submarine's moving. We don't know the total, speed, maybe alleged, 30 knots? Underwater, who knows? But
39,
right,
50
something
max.
going triple digits by you? I mean, that has to be something that's alarming. But in most of those cases, there's never been some sort of an attack on any of the submarines. It just seems to go by on its own way as if it wasn't even there. So that's fascinating stuff. Tell us about that. That's
amazing. and it's interesting because the word that I named my documentary about USOs, unidentified submerged objects, is called transmedium, and that is one of the 5 observables that are outlined in Dan Farah's The Age of Disclosure. Transmedium is where we see one of these UFOs seemingly travel between the different mediums on our planet, which is either the gaseous sky to the ocean, and there's no friction, there's no explosion, there's no, real effect on the craft. It just seems to keep going at its momentum, at its speed. And vice versa, it can go from the ocean to the sky and then to space. We don't have any craft like that. I mean,
none that I know of, right? That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think, Elon Musk must be, eating his heart out when he hears about those.
Absolutely.
So, transmedium is something that has been really reported well. Old UFO researchers in this field, like my friend Richard Dolan, who was in the documentary I made, talks about decades and decades and decades of sightings where UFOs seemingly come in and out of the oceans. And I think when Navy submariners are talking about this phenomenon as well, like the XOs on the bridge shouting out, "We got a fast mover," and it's traveling over 300 knots, which in miles is like 600 miles plus.
Totally amazing. Yeah.
It's insane. There's nothing like that we have in our arsenal. We do have nuclear we have torpedoes, I don't want to say nuclear and scare everybody here, but we have torpedoes that can create supercavitation. And that basically is a envelope of air bubble that's created around the torpedo from shooting that in a burst out the tip of it, so it can cut through the water quicker. But, the top speed is maybe 150, 120 miles per hour. So we're dealing with something that's going way, way faster than that. And
totally amazing. And the Russians, they claim, have something called an AI-guided torpedo, long in length. I don't know, maybe it's 40, 50, 60 feet long. But Darcy, they're saying that can go underwater at triple digits in knots in the water, and that it's capable of, deploying 100 megaton, nuclear warhead in its tip, meant to go into harbors and create a gigantic radiation tsunami, not to scare people. But all this technology, it's so amazing as to where we get it from. And that's the whole reason to discuss this and the documentary that we're talking about. And you're doing great in describing what's going on with the age of disclosure, in your opinion, because so many of these mysteries, people sum it up and say, hey, they can switch on and off our nuclear weapon systems at will. Maybe, like you mentioned, interdimensional beings. Some even go so far to say demons from above. And wow, Project Bluebeam, going into that, talking about, many of the governments of the world creating a fake alien invasion. I mean, that may sound a little bizarre to people. And then with this documentary, some people's responses are simply this. And here's one quote. They are telling us without telling us, end quote. Pretty powerful stuff, don't you think?
Well, I don't know if that person even watched the film.
There you go.
They seem to be telling us a lot, so I don't know what they're talking about.
Hey,
and
everybody's got an opinion, right, out there?
Everybody's got an opinion, yeah.
That's
they
right.
sometimes enter an experience with that opinion made. So, unfortunately, I don't agree with that person. But I would say that, if you give this film a chance, right now it might be a little bit expensive. The early adopters are going to go spend that money. They got to see it first, but eventually it's going to come down in price for rental or go free on some service. And I'm sure most people will enjoy something in that film. Something in that film they'll be able to take away. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody has an opinion. And we appreciate that here on the Dr. Sky Experience. And to remind everybody, you still have time, ladies and gentlemen, to get in. Why not? That's what the show is all about. You, the caller, and we talk with you, ladies and gentlemen, about these subjects. We love to have a dialogue, and we love to do it with critical thinking. And certainly those are the things. We just ask that our callers just stay on measure as far as the topic. And later, I promise, as always, at the Dr. Sky Experience, we will go and do a very detailed sky report for the end of November and into the early part of December. And a subject that both Darcy and I will talk about is the story of Comet 3I Atlas, not only from what the theories are, but the true observational side of where the comet is in the morning sky now, for those of you that might have a larger telescope or some way to see it, because as they say, it ain't coming back, right, Darcy, for hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years, a strange interloper into the deep part of our solar system. Fascinating stuff. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And again, tell us your website and how they can get in touch with you on the other social media platforms and like the YouTube and Instagram. Just give us that information again.
Oh, yeah, sure. If people want to reach out or see stuff that I'm posting about and discussing online, on Twitter, it's @OccultJourneys, YouTube channel, @OccultJourneys. I've also partnered with Watch Mojo, and we're doing bi-weekly shows and little documentary releases on this subject with the Unveiled podcast by Rob Fliss. And, I've got a website, occultjourneys.com. Feel free to hit me up on my socials.
Well, what we want to do when we come back after this particular break is go into the many documentaries that you have out there. As you describe some, we talk about the transmedium, the fast movers, and USOs. That, to me, Darcy, is so fascinating. I mean, and there's stories going way back, even 50 years ago, I believe, up in Halifax in Nova Scotia, in which our first real documented sightings that were actually put down on paper and reported of these strange underwater phenomenon, at least allegedly not of this earth or anything, at least in those days, that we would have the technology even now to do something like that. More when we come back on the Dr. Sky Experience with your calls. We got Ted in Forest Hills, Robert in Philadelphia, and many more people calling in at 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Don't you believe in flying saucers, they ask me? Don't you believe in telepathy, in ancient astronauts, in the Bermuda Triangle? How about life after death? No, I reply. No, 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 and again no. One person recently goaded into desperation by the litany of unrelieved negation and burst out and said, "Don't you believe in anything?" Yes, I said, I believe in evidence. I believe in observation, measurement, and reasoning confirmed by independent observers. I believe anything, no matter how wild and ridiculous, if there is evidence for it. The wilder and more ridiculous something is, however, the firmer and more solid the evidence will have to be. A quote, ladies and gentlemen, from the late, great Isaac Asimov. And for our New York area listeners, did you know in the 1970s you could have called him up? His number was listed simply in the white pages, and I had the privilege and honor of doing that. And who knows, maybe you did too. Our special guest on the Dr. Sky Experience for the length of the 2-hour show, Darcy Weir. He is a documentarian and so much more in the story of UFOs and many, many other subjects. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, at 34 minutes after the hour. We now begin with our callers. Let's say good morning to Robert in Philadelphia. Robert, good morning. Happy Thanksgiving week to you and weekend. How you doing?
Hey, Dr. Sky, and to your guest, Mr. Weir, I really appreciate the work you do, and I hope you guys had a wonderful holiday yesterday. I was listening to what you guys were talking about, specifically when it came to the things that these things do, like moving 40 miles across the map in 6 seconds or shooting straight up. How that might affect a living being inside of that, and it would lead me to believe that the smaller ones might be entirely, automatic and might not be subject to that. But the larger ones that have been doing the same things, and as Mr. Weir was talking about, the transmedium, going from one medium to another effortlessly, it sounds to me like there's some kind of anti-grav force field involved. Now, I do a lot of reading on this, and I have found that there are two commonalities when it comes to talking about things like this. And this doesn't matter whether you're talking about the Inca, the ancient Japanese, the Egyptians, Greco-Romans, and it's really outlined beautifully in the Veda text in the Mahabharata. The commonality is gyroscopes or gyroscopic structures and the element mercury. And I'm wondering, because it's hard to find any like real documented, peer-reviewed scientific analysis of that type of thing. But have you heard anything about what that might have to do? If not mercury, moscovium, whatever. But there's something that's been around for a long time that might be the key to this whole thing. You know what I mean?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Robert, thanks for asking those questions or talking about that. I did actually make a documentary called Secret Space UFOs, Rise of the TR-3B. And the TR-3B is fabled to be this either Northrop Grumman or Skunk Works super secret anti-gravity craft.
Amazing.
Supposedly, it was a big black triangle that had on either corner. Now, this is what a whistleblower back in the day named Edgar Rothschild Fouché discussed in the public. He was saying that this craft basically was in the works at Area 51 and other places in the third-party military contractor arena for about a decade and a half. And on each corner was actually, the initial model was a hydrogen thruster. And then in the middle, there was this rotating, super-cooled mercury, they called it an MFD, magnetic field disruptor. And with that super cooled mercury, it would become like a solid, because as we know, mercury is a liquid normally when it's of room temperature. But they would super cool it. They would rotate it at a super high speed, and that this would actually discharge some kind of anti-gravity effect. And I think it reduced the lift of, or reduced the weight of an object up to something like 80%. So So they got almost 100% there, but the TR-3B, was supposed to be massive. It was supposed to carry tons of personnel, like a tank, if you will, to space from the ground. And
that's incredible, Darcy.
That is
Robert, this is fascinating stuff, and I know you have an affiliation with the aerospace world, so please continue with your question, comment, or observation here, because what we're hearing here is amazing.
I'll just finish there because I had always pictured like a gyroscopic structure within liquid mercury, but a gyroscopic structure made of super cool mercury is an entirely different thing for me to read about tonight, and I really appreciate that, and I'm going to leave it there. You guys have a great weekend, and I love the show. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Weir.
Robert. Always appreciate your commentary. Yeah. What you're saying, Darcy, to me is most fascinating. The TR-3B, we've seen what it looks like, I guess artist renditions of this particular craft. But let me ask you straight up, because the audience may not be familiar with this. March 13th, 1997, here in Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm broadcasting from, we had this most incredible sighting of, quote, the Phoenix Lights. In your opinion, any connection to such a device or a craft like that with the same kind of technology that you're describing?
Yeah. Some people have said, well, maybe that was a TR-3B because it was a massive triangle, right? But the thing that is, a little bit off about that is that it was too big. Like, from reports that have come in throughout the years, and, James Fox, UFO film director, made I Know What I Saw, which is a History Channel documentary on the Phoenix Lights. And, that thing traveled across 2 states. It went from, I believe, Arizona through Nevada and then stopped in Arizona. And as it passed over the 2 states, thousands of people were observing this. Many hundreds and hundreds of calls to the authorities, to the police. And many of them said that they said it was the size of like a football field. Well,
you're absolutely right, Darcy. And a good aviation friend of mine who had thousands and thousands of hours behind the, controls of 747s, 727s, and other military aircraft, he calls me, and my silly story, I'll be brief, to the audience, they may have heard this. I'm watching television of Seinfeld that night, nothing wrong with the show, and my phone's going off the hook. And in those days, we really didn't have cell phones, so I was like, what? Did you see it? I go, no. And this man is describing what you're saying, Darcy. He described it as being 5,000 feet long, and the thing had no propulsion noise of any kind. Now that I take from a guy who knows aircraft and sizes better than somebody who'd say, well, I think, everybody's observation's important, but how about that one? Isn't that incredible? Just to go on with the massive size that you report.
Absolutely. And what I'll say, just to sort of finish up on how whatever the Phoenix Lights was not a TR-3B. So TR-3B, or something that's probably ours, that's a reverse engineered big black triangle, kind of an ARV, alien reproduction vehicle, as it's been coined.
Yes.
That will have 3 lights and then a big light in the middle. So 3 lights being one on each corner. Those are the thrusters. And then the massive light in the middle, probably whatever that anti-gravitic, engine to the craft is. So I don't know. TR-3B is just like a fabled name, but I think at this point, if these contractors have really synthesized the technology, maybe half the, weird black triangles that people record in infrared or night vision that are whizzing around in space, way above passenger jets and stuff, maybe those are like autonomous craft that are just running missions and, doing tactical reconnaissance and all kinds of stuff, shooting around the planet.
But it begs the question, and I'm sure the listeners out there, nobody can really answer this, then if that is true with the description of the propulsion system, where did we get that kind of technology in rapid form? Because that in itself describes something that's really sci-fi-like, and those descriptions that I had, not, beleaguering, doing too much on the Phoenix Lights, it was something that I did not see, but so many people did. And to this day, it happens to be in my mind, quick comment from you before we go to the break, one of the most unresolved, incredible sightings in one of the most populated parts of the country. And so many people believe it was truly an interstellar, multidimensional craft. And others believe simply that it's something along the lines of what you were describing on a much more massive scale. So final comment on that before we go to this next break. And then, ladies and gentlemen, Ted in Forest Hills, Mark in Arizona, and you, ladies and gentlemen, at 1-800-848-9222. We'll do our very best to get you on the air with our special guest, Darcy Weir. Finishing up on that, please respond.
Yeah, I'd say the other sort of anomaly about it is that people that looked up, sometimes they said that it almost seemed as if they could see the stars right through the material of the craft.
Exactly. Yes.
So exactly. I don't think that could be a very top secret metamaterial technology where it's reflecting whatever is above in the sky below so that you stay concealed. Maybe they worked, maybe the American aviation contractors figured that out, but I doubt it. In the 90s, I don't know. I'm skeptical that they could make something that big.
So am I.
Hover silently and, show all of these cloaking characteristics and such. It's a pretty big one. And, even the Senator Fife Symington came out and said, I saw it with my very own eyes from my home. It was out there above the mountains, and it blew my mind, but I had to come out to the public and say, nothing to see here, folks, to prevent panic.
Well, more with Darcy Weir, ladies and gentlemen, and your questions and comments on the Dr. Sky Experience when we continue.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You see a lot of UFOs with closed eyes and an open mind, so said author Toba Beta. As we continue at 46 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, Darcy Weir, our very special guest, as you can check his website, occultjourneys.com. Let's continue with the callers. Let's say good morning to Ted in Forest Hills. Thanks for your patience, and how are you this morning? Ted, do we have you on the line? Please continue. Okay, let's go to Mark in Arizona. Good morning, Mark. How are you doing this morning? You're on with Darcy.
Good morning. Good morning, Darcy. A very interesting show, and I think one thing you need to all think about, it's like the dog chases its tail all the time. Every time there's a UFO incident, we all get a little crazy about it. But I'd like to add that I got to Roswell in 97 for the 50th anniversary. That started my trend. And there I had the opportunity to meet Linda Moulton Howe. They stayed with different times at my home. Stan Freeman. And then I went to Aztec to visit what happened there in the 60s, or the 40s, I'm sorry. I met with a gentleman by Lonnie Zamora in Socorro, New Mexico, he was a police officer in Socorro in like 64. He was on the Unsolved Mysteries twice. So I've had a whole time to analyze all these things. And I also witnessed the Phoenix Lights, interesting situation. I know the doctor that examined Travis Walton when he was first picked up and what was in his stomach, what wasn't in his stomach. So I have a little bit of interest in what's going on, but I really am concerned that most people have never hit the point, or they dodged the point about the demons part. It's pretty much biblical if you want to know what the answers, what they could be. Not all of it is, but the demons that we have that are creating ships for our government are people like that's in the movie. The gentleman, I guess he was with DIA, or it wasn't Brennan, it's the other guy that's always in trouble, lying on testimonials, the bad guy. What's his name? Right. You know what I'm talking about. The guy, the funny-looking old man that's going to jail soon. But I think the real thing we need to be concerned about is you're never going to know the answers because, first of all, the government is never going to tell you anything. They never have told you anything. And it's always a psyop here, a psyop there. So, Darcy, my question for you is, are you tired of chasing the dog's tail or watching the dog chase his tail and never catching it? What say you?
Wow, Darcy, that's a lot to ponder, but go ahead, please.
Mark, thank you for all that preamble. It does sound like you're tired of chasing the tail. For me, I think people do get a bit confused when this PSYOP word is thrown around so much. And it sounds like just in this case, in terms of the documentary, Age of the Disclosure, and all these people coming forward and giving their testimony, what you have to understand is these people come from backgrounds where they've been exposed to UAP, UFO reality, and they actually think the PSYOP being played out on people is that these things don't exist. So they're actually rebelling against their own institutions by being whistleblowers, going against the grain and saying there's something very real here. Yeah, we have to address it. And I don't think that's a PSYOP. I think there's a lot of paranoia. And once people start saying PSYOP to themselves, they start labeling everything as PSYOP, and they might need to go see a shrink. But in this case, I think the real PSYOP is the fact that we've been lied to for 80 years now. If you've spoken with Linda Moulton Howe and Stanton Friedman, I actually interviewed Stanton for one of my first documentaries called Being Taken.
An interesting gentleman. We've had the pleasure, too, not to cut you short there, Darcy, but we had the pleasure of interviewing him at one of the space conventions just before he passed away, and he was so steadfast. And Mark, I think you probably know it since you met him. He was so steadfast about his Roswell story that it really illuminated me. I was like, wow, this stuff's fascinating. But sadly, he passed away just, about 4 or 5 years ago, and what a great contributor to the UFO story. Please continue, Darcy. I just wanted to jump in on that.
Yeah, I will just say, I understand your argument that maybe we're getting the best truth from the experiencers and the original, let's call them the OGs of the UFO disclosure arena, which usually populate all of the conferences, especially the Area 51 conference that you traveled to and met with some of these people. But we're living in a new age. We are living in a modern age of new people coming forward to lend more credibility than just those earlier people that, in all honesty, they seemed so fringe that the government would call them crackpots. Now we have people coming out of government settings saying, no, this is real. So I think we all have to move together, the original people in ufology and the people that are actually coming out now saying this is real. Because otherwise, what's the point? There's no point in being one against the other. I think it's really, what is the government really holding back from the public? We need to get it at all costs so we can move forward.
We sure do. Mark, you get the last closing comment here as we close out hour number 1 here. And it's interesting that you mentioned, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, something along the lines of demons. I mean, tell us a little more about that, but please continue with your comment.
Well, basically, Old Testament and New Testament, if people that are studying UFOs have not read the Bible and aren't living that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, they're missing an opportunity. And I think what Darcy is saying is he has a great argument. I think he's right about the old school coming back. And what I find is that what he's talking about tonight is that we need to be open-minded about what these new people that are coming out, the new generation, that are talking and explaining what they think is going on from their experience. And I still think that in the long run, you're never going to find out. For example, they did say that China, we're worried about in the movie, the trailer, or one of the trailers I saw, that China and the U.S. are fighting for all this information and so forth. Okay. The U.S. had 50 years of experience with the doing their research from Roswell, and China didn't have that unless they stole it, which they probably did. But a lot of those information departments are so tight you can't get into them. And did you ever meet a guy by the name of Clifford Stone, Darcy?
I didn't meet him in person, but I'm very familiar with his story. And I have seen the videos of him crying about his non-human intelligence encounter.
Yeah, what was his story, briefly, if you can share it with the audience that may not know?
Go ahead,
Mark.
Yeah, I want you, Darcy. Just describe who Mark's talking about in some detail so people understand who it is.
So he worked for the military, and he said that he was called out to a crash site to have a psychic connection with some of the beings that were still alive at the site. And he took part in the 2001 disclosure project put on by Dr. Greer, and gave his testimony there. There are some things that are a bit wishy-washy about his testimony. Things changed over time, so I'm not fully convinced, but very interesting story nonetheless, and it's very possible that there are, kind of psychics that are used to be brought in and speak to non-human intelligence. I don't know.
Well, Mark, thank you for your commentary. Always insightful here as we talk about these mysteries. To open our minds about these great mysteries that, hopefully through the work that many are doing, like Darcy Weir and others, we hopefully will be able to get more than just scratching the surface on this. So thank you, Mark, in Arizona. Appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And I wanted to mention something, Darcy. I don't know how familiar you are with this website, maybe extremely well, but people who've wondered about the government's, Freedom of Information Act. There's a website called governmentattic.org, governmentattic.org. And apparently, I've looked at this, they list so many of these Freedom of Information requests in the great detail. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a sleuth that wants to learn more about what has been revealed, their Latin phrase is videre licet. And if you're not a scholar in Latin, here's the simple English. It's called, and I quote, "It's permitted to see," end quote. Very interesting stuff. Are you familiar at all with that website that I just mentioned?
I'm actually looking at it right now. I see that they list PDFs from just back to November 24th so far. I mean, they've got really up-to-date stuff, and this is just a pretty cool source. So I'm going to check that out.
Absolutely. And always want to give out information for people to make their minds up. I mean, many people, obviously the freedom of what we have in our country and many others hopefully continuing is that you don't have to believe anything we're saying, but respectful as we are to the experts that we bring on the air here. And Darcy, I really appreciate you. I mean, we're going to go into hour number 2. I'd like to talk more about your documentaries, of course, so people can learn much more about the things that you've researched and spent so much of your life and time and money to develop so people can at least have an open mind on this and open back our minds, learning so much more about the mysteries that abound out there deep in the universe. But before we go to the top of the hour here, just bring up to me and to the audience, what is the most fascinating mystery of all this that you've uncovered in probably 2 minutes, if you can explain it, and I'm sure you can. What's still the most incredible story that you've heard from anybody at this point in time?
Yeah, I think the fact that our high-ranking Navy and Air Force members are basically trying to intercept these objects, and they fire off like ping pong balls or, they just completely evade any detection or tracking when they don't want to. So it's like those things really show dominance to me. And I take the reports from pilots like Ryan Graves, Alex Dietrich, Dave Fravor, very seriously, and those aren't the only pilots. There's pilots in Iran. Back in 1976, there was a massive event that happened, a mass witness sighting over Tehran, which is the capital city of Iran. Mm-hmm. At night, a massive UFO was flying in the airspace over their city, and the military there quickly scrambled a few fighter jets to intercept this thing. It seemed to have the ability to shut down their comms, shut down their tracking, shut down their weapon systems when they were powerful. Within a mile or so of the object. And believe it or not, the whole city lost power. Subsequently, and this is like thousands of people that are experiencing this. Subsequently, the American Air Force flew over there to be debriefed. They wanted to know what happened, and the Iranian government and Air Force welcomed them with open arms. So
amazing.
I think this is a common occurrence.
More with our special guest, Darcy Weir of OccultJourneys.com. And also check out the website we just promoted to learn about more from Freedom of Information, governmentattic.org. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, more on the Dr. Sky Experience with your calls, like Stu in Brooklyn and others when we come back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen, continues here with the Dr. Sky Experience. 6 minutes after the hour, hoping and praying that your Thanksgiving weekend was everything you wanted it to be. And happy holidays to everybody listening in the vast audience here of Talk Radio 77 WABC. Hard to believe that this year is almost over, but of course the Dr. Sky Experience talks with you about great subjects and the mysteries from worlds beyond, from astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests in the mix, and stories proudly of American exceptionalism. Our contact number, 1-800-848-9222. And let's thank our helmsman as we talk in Theater of the Mind, this great starship, the powerful 77 WABC. Our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, making sure the program sounds as good as you would expect it to do. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, if you're just joining us right now for this hour, hour number 2, is Darcy Weir, UFO researcher, documentarian, and he continues to talk with us about the great subjects that are out there. We had an earlier discussion about The Age of Disclosure, a new film by Dan Farah, available on Netflix and certain theaters across the nation. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Darcy. Let's go to the callers. We had a lot of people on the line. Let's say good morning if you're there. Stu in Brooklyn, good morning. Your question or comments?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm a sailor. When you're on the bridge of a ship in mid-ocean without light pollution, I can tell you see an awful lot of things that nobody has been able to explain away as stars or shooting or whatever. Anyhow, that's not why I called. Question I have is this. 3I Atlas is very much in the news. The comet. Is there any protocol that you use to analyze the data and say this fits the profile of a potential alien spaceship, or it really is what we say it is? It's just another comet.
Well, Darcy, if you don't mind, can I jump on this one? And I want to hear, of course, your opinions on this. You research deeply. But, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about 3I Atlas. What is it if you've never heard about it? Stu, you've heard about it. It's the third detection of an interstellar comet, meaning it's a comet that doesn't come from a cloud of material that, of course, they're controlled, these comets, by the gravity of the sun. This is from another star system, they believe. So to answer your question, how they can do the detection and analysis of this, it's mostly through spectroscopic observations. They take a telescope and they put this particular light of the object through the spectroscope and they see what chemical elements are coming off of this. Now, there's a certain individual out there who obviously talks about it as being potentially an interstellar craft. We really don't know, but all the evidence that we can talk about right now comes to us in the fact that it is distinctly a comet, but it might necessarily be a much larger object. It's coming through the plane of the solar system. The solar system is aligned some 60 degrees to the plane of this Milky Way, the big arm galaxy that we live in. So the simple thing is, it's more than likely a comet by observations from telescopes, the biggest being the James Webb. Darcy, please continue because, Stu brings up some interesting observation points and questions.
Yeah, it's an interesting comet. It's a very rare one. We've never seen one this large enter our solar system from outside of it. So it is a, cosmic object. And it is made of nickel, which is something we haven't seen a huge quantity of in a comet before that's, interstellar. But it does have iron, and I think people are so confused about what this is because, A, there's a media machine out there, that is pumping up so much drama and speculation about it.
Boy, did you say it well, Darcy. There you go. You took the words right out of my mouth, because that's exactly, respectful to those that think it's an interstellar craft. It's obviously most likely a large comet.
Yeah, I mean, it has all the hallmarks of a comet. For example, it has a coma. What's a coma? That is all of the material that has sloughed off of the comet because it's heated up as it entered the solar system, heated up by the sun, radiation, all the stuff that's around our solar system starts to change it. And that's the ice, that's the dirt and, particles of all kinds of stuff, rock that are coming out of it. And the coma, because it is so large and it has a interesting composition, it has been green, it has been, which is also a sign of nickel, and it has a faint tail because, unlike other comets that have huge comas, huge tails trailing behind it, this has had a coma, but a faint, smaller tail. And sometimes anomalies like light reflecting from the front of it because it's huge, and so on and so forth. People take all of these sort of anomalies, which are rare things we've seen a comet do, and they equate that to this is an alien craft. That's not the case.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're hearing it from a man who does documentaries on the very subject. And like yourself, I mean, I've been observing comets. Not that I'm any better than anybody. For 40 years, I haven't discovered one, but I can just tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't gotten to our sky report there, and I want Stu to respond in a minute and give him the last word, is that the comet, if you had a rather large telescope, is actually visible, very faint. It's nothing that anybody can see in city lights. It's nothing you can probably see in maybe even darker areas unless you had a massive telescope or a large one. It lies in the constellation of Virgo in the morning, and it pops its head up. But the good news, it's heading away from the solar system, and it's going to pass the Earth, ladies and gentlemen, closest on December the 19th, by the incredibly close, not close distance, kidding, of 130 million miles. This is incredible. So it's going to pass us, and it's obviously nothing to worry about. But Stu, you've been patient. You've been hearing both of us. Let's hear from you finally in your closing comment. Go ahead, please.
I would be curious about what the temperature profile is of a comet traveling through space. And my problem is, among other things, I like to write, working on a novel, which has nothing to do with this. But It brings to mind, if I wanted to hide my presence, why couldn't I pretend I'm a comet and ride the orbit into an area that I want to get to without being intercepted in some way? However, the question is, how hot is that thing moving when it's moving through space?
It's moving 130,000 miles an hour, Stu, and I know Darcy knows this, but you're looking at a comet. See, I've had the luxury here in Arizona with the darker skies and maybe people in other dark locations. It's fascinating because the tail of these comets is amazing if you see them in different pictures. They're hundreds of millions of miles in length, and what's really happening on the surface, not to get overly technical, is that they're covered with primitive ices, maybe even, as some people say, how life occurred on the Earth by a process called panspermia, where cometary material of organics seeded the Earth. But let's go on to this. The particular surface of these comets has organic material, and when it goes and gets closer to the sun, or closer to a star, the object goes from a frozen state directly to a gas and bypasses liquidity called sublimation. And all that material, being sandblasted from the star, meaning the sun, produces this material coming off the thing, just like you saw in the back of a tailpipe of a car. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Cometary, emissions are also in the realm of carbon monoxide. How about that? So, Stu, you get the last word. I'm sorry, we're going deeper into this, but good information.
You're talking about a lot of temperatures. We hide the fusion process in a magnetic blanket because there's nothing on Earth that could contain the millions of degrees of heat involved.
Right.
Maybe some smart extraterrestrials could do the same thing and use the cover of a comet similarly.
It sounds like a novel that we would want to read from you, in all due respect. I think that's the coolest thing I've heard, right, Darcy? Use the comet as a cloaking device so that you can penetrate undetected into the realm of planet number 3, where simply we've been all trying to get along. And it hasn't worked for
maybe. I think the very last analogy I would make about, like, sort of rebuttal to that analogy is, if they're coming into our solar system and following this comet, if that comet came from another neighboring star, even at the speed it's traveling at, it would have taken tens of thousands to maybe millions of years. So
you're right.
That alien species that's coming behind a super slow comet, basically traveling way slower than the speed of light, must be the Flintstones.
And you know what's happening, too, on a serious note, Stu, if you're still with us, there's another comet. There's 3 or 4 comets that are in the vicinity of observation. I've been watching a couple. Comet Lemon was pretty bright. It's still in the sky for those that have the telescopes. And we haven't gotten to our sky report, but here it is, getting right to the point. There's a comet right now that's disintegrating right before our eyes. And what does that mean? The nucleus is splitting up because it's not structurally sound because of the great shock wave that it gets from our star, the sun. So I've watched Comet West when I was up at a place called Garrett Mountain in Patterson. Everybody knows where that is in the New York metro area. And we watched one morning Comet West. Look it up, 1976. And Darcy and Stu, we saw literally the fragmentation. The comet one night was a nucleus. The next morning it had 3. And the next day the whole thing separated. The power of the sun can destroy these comets. But in this particular case, evidence shows us at least that much, right, Darcy, that it's probably just a large comet of another star system. Thank you, Stu in Brooklyn. Appreciate your time. Let's go on and let's continue with the callers. They've been patient. Max in Manhattan, good morning. You're on with Darcy Weir. How you doing? All right. We say good morning to Tony in Clifton. Hope your Thanksgiving was great. How you doing this morning, Tony?
Yes. Hi, Darcy. Hi, Dr. Sky. Thank you for taking my call. So I'm just a few seconds away from Garrett Mountain. So it's really an amazing place.
It is amazing. I had a lot of fun up there watching those things. We used to do public programs for the people to come out. I believe Friday or Saturdays we'd be up there with telescopes, and that's when the lights weren't as bright as they are, but a nice place to remember.
Nice. So, I was thinking that everything that's sort of being interpreted, like you guys were talking about, what people say about everything, really has to do with who the leadership is. And, the space program has been like dead. And now we are looking, actually on December 3rd is the hearing, Dr. Sky, for Jared Isaacman for NASA. And I see everything in part based on the vision of the leader. And, I was looking to see, of course, the hearing is December 3rd. I hope he'll do very well. But
I hope so, too.
There was a paper that was leaked, and he acknowledged it, and it gave some of his vision. It was fairly recently. It was a 62-page document. And one of the things he said, he talked about aliens. And he said NASA's observatory, in this little report that was leaked, NASA's observatory could finally find aliens as it hunts for habitable worlds. And that's, it's all technology and vision. And, to find aliens here, it's a good idea to see where they're coming from. So I like the way he thinks already. What do you guys think? Do you know anything about his other visions? I think he's done some things on podcasts about it, but he seems to be a great visionary for the program, right?
Darcy, your comment. I think Tony brings up some very interesting points about that hearing.
The new NASA administrator, it's an interesting take that he might be part of the disclosure process in terms of saying to the public, we're not alone. And NASA would be an important part of that because they're supposed to be the chief science nerds in North America, right? Let's just be honest. Correct. They're supposed to be the tip of the spear. And they're supposed to validate science as credible or non-credible. So the fact that he's talking about that, now, I will elaborate and say he's most likely discussing the technology behind James Webb, the space telescope. That has the ability to look at distant stars, distant planets, in all kinds of light spectrums that the human eye can't see, electromagnetic wavelengths, and see whether a planet has water, methane, which usually is produced by life, and it's an exhaustive life, as you know. Sometimes we pass gas. And it's able to see all these hallmarks of a civilization, right? Maybe technology or a Dyson sphere or something around a distant star. So I think, and many people have supposed, that James Webb has already even made some kind of discoveries, but they've kept them from the public because they're not ready for that sort of zeitgeist and public consciousness change.
Very interesting.
So we could be, at this precipice where we have government officials and all these guys talking about UFOs coming to the forefront, and then you got NASA on the sidelines going, how are we going to enter this conversation and, show that there's credibility to this and that we know what we're doing? I have actually produced documentaries in the past where it seems NASA's been part of the cover-up. So I'm skeptical, but I think they can't be covering up everything forever. They're eventually going to have to be part of disclosure. And that's probably what this administrator is going to be doing. Maybe he's that guy.
He is. He's a very talented individual, Tony, as you bring to the forefront here. I mean, Jared Taylor Isaacman, a billionaire, an entrepreneur. He's a pilot, a commercial astronaut. He's done a lot. I think he would do a great service. And people tell me, I never met the gentleman, but people who have, that I've known, they said to me he has an incredible bedside manner, if you want to call it, to young people and to people of all ages that want to learn about space. And who better than somebody who really has been there and has this great vision? And if you can turn $1 into $1 billion, you got my ear, because you must know something. And I think it's important that hopefully he'll pass the test. Well, what say you in closing, Tony?
Is James Webb from Lockheed, Darcy? Who is he?
No. James Webb is a telescope. But it's based in space, and it was built by NASA. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was, Tony, he was an administrator way back when of NASA during the early years of as we talked about the Apollo program and such. But you bring up some always interesting points, Tony. And last closing comment that you may have? No, if you have one, please.
No, thank you.
Appreciate your time. Well, looking at this is amazing, Darcy. I mean, talking about a gentleman like that, I mean, hey, what could people say not to put him in that position? I mean, who else would be a contender? Do you know of any other contenders that they're looking at other than him? I wonder who.
I don't know. Maybe, who else is, maybe Bob Bigelow, some other space, venturist. Maybe.
We'll have to wait and see. Okay, let's continue to the bottom of the hour here where they've been patient on the line. Bill in Huntington, you're on, of course, with Darcy Weir. How are you doing this morning, my friend?
Okay. Now, I looked on YouTube for some movies about the Sumerian king Gilgamesh, right? And what I discovered is that there's this really persistent idea that the Sumerian gods are space aliens and that Gilgamesh was a genetic experiment of them. I just don't get why people have fixated on this idea.
So you're saying that there's no connection? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to understand.
I don't believe in flying saucers much, but,
okay.
I just don't see why they've equated this dead religion with the aliens.
Yeah, that's a good sort of statement, and I agree. Like the Epic of Gilgamesh, I think, is a beautiful story. It's part of the Sumerian creation mythos, and I don't think that it's truly how mankind was created, because different cultures, I mean, if you speak to the native indigenous people of North America, some of them say that, the original gods was a giant turtle that created man with clay from the bottom of the ocean. I mean, it just depends what your creation tale is, what culture you speak to around the world. But in the United States, in North America, in the West, people like Eric von Daniken, who wrote Chariots of the Gods, and another individual who studied the Sumerians at great length and studied cuneiform tablets and their creation myth, Zachariah Stitchin, he read those creation myths as true reality, that, these are actual accounts of the early peoples from Sumeria that say we were created by not angels or gods, but by a non-human intelligence from space. And so that just lingers. Those, mythos have lingered in the UFO community for a long time. And many people profess that that's probably the truth. It's not the truth to me. I believe in evolution, adaptive radiative evolution, how we've, started as something that was kind of monkey or ape-like, and eventually Homo sapiens became a dominant species of ape-like man on Earth. And we fanned out. As you can see with adaptive radiation evolution, birds have it. If they fly into a new area and they have to, over hundreds, thousands of years, they eventually have to change their body type. Their beaks start changing to get certain types of foods, and it happens. This is evolution.
That's
Humans,
amazing.
If we went from Africa all the way to the north, we needed less melanin in our skin because we had less sun and we were staying indoors all the time to stay warm when it was freezing cold out. And that's how sort of like the white genes started showing up over thousands of years, being departed from the equator. So I think it's a cultural thing, and I think people have read way too much into that creation myth. And, I think I believe in evolution.
That's amazing. Bill and Huntington, thank you. The time is running out here, but I just wanted to add the Gilgamesh story. As you know, Darcy continues that he's afraid of his own mortality and wants to ascribe toward immortality, but the whole connection there about how the whole world was formed, a great Mesopotamian story that people should study. Very interesting indeed. Darcy, with your okay, when we come back from this break at the bottom of the hour, I'd like to get into the conversation with you, your opinion of the Hellfire UAP, strike video that's recently been out there. And we continue, ladies and gentlemen, with so many other subject matters. We'll be talking about this Bogosphere, the UFO incident in Colombia, this one near the town of Buga in, of course, Colombia. This ball seemingly flying across the sky, no welds, all kinds of markings on it, that and much more here on the Dr. Sky Experience. 1-800-848-9222. We will be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
From 1961 to 1965, Barney and I had not seen another UFO. A quote from the late Betty Hill, who in September of 1961, still, in my opinion and the opinion of many others, research scientists, had some of the best evidence for an actual close encounter of the third kind. 33 minutes after the hour, our special guest, as we call him, a friend of the show, Darcy Weir, UFO researcher, documentarian. He continues to join us here. Darcy, I wanted to get into some of the current news and your analysis of it. The Hellfire UAP video, allegedly October the 24th, 2024, released by Congressman Eric Burleson, and this coming from a whistleblower. Describe to us what this might be in your opinion. Many people have seen it, and many people are still scratching their head. What the heck could that be?
Right. So we're looking in this video at, first of all, it's shot in FLIR, which is forward-looking infrared video technology. This is in a light spectrum we can't see with our own human eye, but it's very good in black and white, separating objects and for craft to track things. It'll make things usually glow super white if it's an object of interest. That can be considered the white hot mode, or it can make them glow black, and that's black hot mode. So essentially, the footage was shot in 2024 on October 20th, and this is off the coast of Yemen. A Hellfire missile is shot out of a military drone called an NQ-9. And, what you see earlier on in the footage is what looks like an orb, sort of a round object that's
sure looks like
white.
One, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the Hellfire missile just looks like a rod that eventually hits the orb. And from what I interpret, what I'm seeing with my own eye, and I've seen other UFO footage, I look at this, and to me, that looks like a soft target, meaning that looks like something that was punctured by the Hellfire missile. Meaning more like a balloon. I don't know what it exactly is, but the Hellfire missile just sails right through this thing and keeps going. It doesn't detonate. If it was a hard object, you bet your ass that Hellfire missile is going to go
right.
off.
Absolutely.
So to me, it was very strange that it didn't detonate. Unless it's a soft target and it just didn't have the weight in order for it to detonate. And it just poked a hole through this thing. It almost looks like a fabric afterwards that kind of spins off and falls down. Now, the weird thing that happens after that is you see three other objects kind of rotate out of that main object, and people say, oh, well, it creates a triangular formation. Well, here's the thing, guys. When something is static in space and it's three different points, it's always going to make a triangle. It can't make any other. It can't make any other shape. Yeah,
amazing.
Because you've got 3 points, right? And how many points are to a triangle?
Yeah, exactly. So you're looking at something here. I mean, one theory, I'm reading this too, and I'm not going to read it on the air, the balloon hypothesis you've talked about. Others say a classified military test in which we know what the source object was, doing some kind of test. A hybrid theory, and I'm not going to read the details here. Combining both arguments suggest the Hellfire video might depict a military training event rather than a genuine UAP encounter. Sounds like the same thing. And also the strange theory again, which you can extrapolate on, the whole concept of it being something like a tic-tac type of vehicle. But I think you've shot holes in it, no pun intended, when you talked about the object looked like it went right through, the missile went right through the object, correct?
Yeah, it looked like a soft target to me. I mean, I would expect if it was something that was solid, the Hellfire missile would have detonated. We would have seen a big flash, an explosion, and then objects moving around, right? But this thing sort of just puncture and keep going. That's what I see. If there's somebody that can give a way better analysis in the UFO UAP camp to prove me wrong about that, I'm all ears. I would love to hear how this is definitely a UFO.
Well documented information, as you know, comes from the MUFON Journal. I'm looking at this here, the November 2025 edition, currently hot off the press, and it goes through great detail as you've explained here. But the one that really troubles me, and I've watched this, and I really certainly don't want to discount anybody's theories on this. I want to hear yours, and that revolves around the bogosphere, this UFO incident of an object over the skies of Colombia near the town of Buga, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. The object itself, 4.5 pounds. Describe this and the strangeness of it, because it really does seem like, first of all, if it was man-made or a hoax, how the heck is the object moving around? Describe the experience of what this bogosphere is.
Right. So it's a little metallic sphere that was found in Colombia in this town near Buga. And I have challenges with this too. I hate to be the debunker of UFO things on a UFO-related show, but I've seen a lot about the bogosphere since it first came out. The first two initial videos that were released looked very much like AI, okay? And, and what you see is a point of view of the sky and a metallic orb kind of hovering around and then going to the ground. And then you see a cut and footage of a man walking down a hillside and finding this orb on the ground, picking it up and being like, hurrah, I've got the UFO, right? But
yes,
there were subsequent videos that came out after that in which the same group said they found more video of the same object flying in the sky. And this time, you actually see fishing line hanging in the sky and glimmering with the sun reflecting on it as it sails across the sky on camera. And that's when I said, okay, this is obviously a hoax. If it's the same team that produced this video that captured the supposed UFO, I think this is a hoax. And then you look at the bogosphere itself. Buga, I think, is how it's pronounced, but I like to call it the bogus sphere.
That's a good one. I like that.
That has etchings in it that looks like, you know, your neighbor that does arts and crafts could do. You know what I mean? It does not look like the fine craftsmanship we would expect from the Zeta Reticulans. And I have seen them doing these weird like tests on it and stuff, and when you look at it, it has all these scratches on it that it just looks like it's a piece of art, you know, and a very crudely made one. One of the major people to prop it up was Jaime Maussan. He's known for getting involved with, you know, highly dubious campaigns that promote certain UFO stories, and they turn out to be major hoaxes. And Dr., or I'll call him Mr. Stephen Greer, because, you know, I don't even think he practices. And
well, this is interesting, and not to change the subject before we go to this last break. You know, there's many interesting things. I've invited Dr. Stephen Greer to come on the particular show, and I'm not just trying to disparage him. It was a long process, and it required some kind of verification and also some kind of financial contribution. And I was like, well, that's never happened with any guest I've had. And not to disparage him.
$10,000, right?
Your opinion is more important since you're in the field. But what I'm trying to say is maybe, and not to be funny here, maybe that bogosphere or bogosphere, as you describe it, will draw lots of money at a Lloyd's of London auction someday, because look at all the notoriety that the thing has gotten. And obviously, who knows? But, you know, somebody will pay big for that, I'm sure.
You got it. You hit the nail on the head there. And, you know, I do a show with this guy, Rob Fliss, on Watch Mojo, which is one of the bigger YouTube channels out there. And we were talking about Age of Disclosure, and we talked about how Stephen Greer was cut out of the film. And somebody that was very unhappy by my comments jumped on to the YouTube comments and said, you know, I can't believe you guys didn't interview Greer, and why would this filmmaker not interview Greer, and referring to me, Darcy Weir. And I replied to him, why don't you interview Greer? Do you think you can afford it? And is your audience big enough? Those are the two major prerequisites that have always kept me from speaking to him.
And actually, it would be interesting. It would be the Greer and Weir debate if we had this live on WABC. I mean, that'd be an interesting conversation.
Let's do it.
Yeah, there you go, my friend. That'd be quite interesting. Not to cut anybody short, the contact number here, if you'd like to still join us, we have some time available for you, 1-800-848-9222. The mysteries of the universe are unfolding right before your eyes and ears, ladies and gentlemen, as we talk with Darcy Weir. His website, I recommend you take a good look at it, is occultjourneys.com. And so much more. When we come back, we'll give you a brief sky report and end off with many of the documentaries that our special guest is involved in so he can explain to you more of the mysteries of the universe. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I happen to be privileged enough to be in on the fact that we have been visited on this planet and the UFO phenomenon is real. Those are the words of Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14, a good friend of ours, ladies and gentlemen, over the years, one who claimed to have an extraterrestrial, more of an outer-body experience on the way to the moon. A man that founded an organization called the Noetic Institute and talked about how we're all connected in something called the quantum hologram. 46 minutes after the hour, Darcy Weir continues to the top of the hour. Very popular, ladies and gentlemen. And you, again, can go to his website, occultjourneys.com. Darcy, I promised the audience a little sky report, as people do enjoy. They tell me that in our emails at drsky@wabcradio.com. You know, folks, the moon is waxing, meaning it's getting brighter. It's moving on to a beautiful full phase. Right on December the 4th, we'll see another supermoon. This one called the long night moon or the cold moon. It's a supermoon because it's closer than most moons of the entire calendar month. And if you're seeing the moon right now, as you're listening to this radio show, the Dr. Sky Experience, wherever you're listening, if the moon is up, look about 5 to 10 degrees just to the left of the moon. That's the planet Saturn. Right now, some 416 million miles away from your eye, it continues to get brighter. And then Jupiter, I should mention, also now in the northeast sky. As I made a mistake here, the planet Jupiter is 416 million miles away. And if you could journey on a light beam, it would take you some 37 minutes. Darcy Weir, let's talk about your many documentaries. Enlighten us on some of these, from humanoids, the real close encounters, secret space UFOs. You have the floor, sir.
Yeah, I have been producing films since 2012, and many of them are in the UFO realm. So if you want to check them out, I have a website, occultjourneys.com, and you can go through, look at the posters, click on a poster. Usually that'll take you through to a streaming platform where you can watch it for free. And you can watch the trailer, read about the films. Essentially, I've covered many different thin slices of the phenomenon and dissected stories that have come out of the UFO community throughout the decades. Anything from whistleblowers to crop circles, UFOs on NASA space missions, UFOs in the oceans, USOs in that case, and corroborating testimony and evidence that goes with that footage. I'm a UFO video nerd, and you've heard me debunk a couple things tonight, but there are videos that I think are real. The Aguadilla 2013 footage, which is a 4-minute piece of video that came from Puerto Rico, from the Customs Border Patrol guys. My documentary on that is called Puerto Rico's UAP. You can watch that on you can watch that on my YouTube channel for free, and it will be showing up on other platforms as the time goes by. But yeah, I've produced a Bitcoin documentary. I've done stuff on cryptids, Bigfoot, and Sasquatch, which is essentially the same thing. I'm just interested in all of these things that are living on the fringe of a reality. And
yeah, that's amazing. I mean,
if any of them are real.
Yeah, and one of them I wanted to ask you about, because this is the strangest thing, and I've asked this to other people on shows like this, and their interpretation is different of their answer. But here's the question. You describe who saw the Men in Black. I mean, that we all know. Tommy Lee Jones, we know Will Smith. But on the real serious side of the equation, tell the audience about this phenomenon. And it's really a bizarre thing, ladies and gentlemen. Tell us about the Men in Black, as they're called.
Yeah, I think the real life Men in Black are people that come from different intelligence or law enforcement backgrounds, whether that's the FBI, the CIA, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, NSA, all of these different agencies and enforcement apparatus within the United States send out their best men to intercept and prevent information from reaching the public. And in the film, Who Saw the Men in Black, we talk about encounters throughout history where people saw UFOs and they were quickly intercepted by these people that identified themselves from either an agency or form of law enforcement that were basically saying, we need your evidence and we need you to shut up. And many of these people are very credible. They come from different walks of life. Some are pilots. Some are, John Callahan came from the FAA. There's people that we interview, Richard Doty, who, was responsible for basically gaslighting this individual named Paul Benowitz into thinking that there was aliens in the Dulce, New Mexico area working with humans at a base. And
yeah, I've heard of that one, right. That's amazing.
I think his real job there was to keep attention off of Kirkland. Is it Kirkland Air Force Base?
Yes, Kirkland Air Force Base with the nuclear weapon museum that they have there, too, and the history of nuclear weapons, right?
Yeah, at the time, Benowitz had intercepted some communications and such from that air base. And that's when, he was intercepted by Office of Air Force, Office of Special Investigations, Richard Doty. And we interview him in the documentary. He defends himself, but then he also talks about the strategies that they could employ to get the information they wanted from a witness. And, it ranges and it fits the description of what a man in black would do.
But Darcy, is there, real quickly, because we're running out of time, and I love this conversation and love to have it again, and I hope you'll come back, because we value the information you're giving us here. But here's the quick one. In the story of Men in Black, I've read all these reports of what these beings or whatever they were, people, may have sounded as if they're like androids or robots, and thus the connection, what do you think, that they are part of the extraterrestrial side of the whole thing? Any truth to that, or is that just a fiction tale?
Well, we cover a case of Albert K. Binder, who started the very first international UFO group for research back in the 1950s. He shut it down swiftly, and later in the 1960s, he wrote a book about how he was intercepted by these kind of ghoulish men in black that just appeared in his home. And they threatened him, and they said, you're not to talk about this, and, you can when we're done with what we're doing in the Antarctic. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's one of these paranormal Men in Black experiences that people have had, and that is a non-human intelligence sort of linked story, right, where they have some kind of means or motives here, and they don't want to jeopardize those, so they intercept witnesses and get them to shut up,
Incredible.
And maybe it's true. Maybe it's true.
You never know, Darcy, but keep the fires going because it's incredible. I mean, talking about this stuff. Again, ladies and gentlemen, The Age of Disclosure, a film by Dan Farah. That's something that's popular in the news. Equally popular is our very special guest, Darcy Weir. His website, occultjourneys.com, a plethora of information there. And that's amazing. So about how long does it really take? I mean, that's kind of a generic question to actually go from start to finish on these documentaries. I mean, if you had an average time to produce these things, you take your time to do it right. But what are you talking about? Years to do these or not quite?
I mean, some longer than others. I just finished one that I started shooting in 2021. So that's a 4-year doc. There's other docs that I've done in maybe 2 years or a year and a half. It just depends on if I get the testimony I want to tell the story, as well as edit and get all of the post and stuff done that can tell the story properly. So It ranges.
Amazing, Darcy. And one thing I say, it would be amazing if this President Donald John Trump, had the opportunity to make the revelation that all these things over the last 80 years are true, and then supplying us with the evidence. Am I a dreamer? But I think it would be a great opportunity for any president, but this current president. I think that would really change the course of history on the answer. Why are we not being told the truth? And hopefully get that. Your take on that real quick.
Well, I think it's definitely on his radar. He's seen it appear on Fox News all this week with the Age of Disclosure, many different speaking moments where the people said, Donald Trump has the ability to announce to the world, to the public, that we're not alone if he wants to. And he's been briefed by military pilots and all these credible people that have also been featured in the documentary. So I think he knows about it, but he's said publicly before that he's not fully convinced that it's a real thing and that he even cares about it. So I don't think he's going to be the disclosure president.
Okay.
We'll see if the Epstein files come out in their full form.
It's amazing. Darcy Weir, thank you so much for being with us and staying up with us as we move deeper into our Saturday morning here on Talk Radio 77 WABC with the Dr. Sky Experience. And folks, if you hadn't been able to get in, we always continue on in future iterations with you. If you'd like to email me with your questions and comments, it's just DRSKY, of course, at WABCradio.com. Darcy, thank you. The best of a holiday season to you. And let's get together sometime and redo this and enlighten our audience on what's really going on. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Yeah, thank you for having me, man.
Always a privilege and honor. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you may know, the last Saturday of every month, we are pre-recorded because of my duties on an interesting dinner cruise on something called the Dolly Steamboat in Arizona. A beautiful cruise into the dark skies of Arizona. If you're ever interested and headed out this way, just check out dollysteamboat.com. And a special thanks and, of course, a shout-outs and of a sincerity to owner and operator John Katzimatidis and from the executive staff, Chad Lopez, for permitting me to be behind this microphone. A dream of a lifetime, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hoping that you're enjoying this just the same. In the future months, we will continue, ladies and gentlemen, talking about many, many interesting topics. And don't forget, we also delve into the subject of American exceptionalism. I myself, like many of you who spend time in the military and even in the law enforcement realm, have so many stories to talk about truth, justice, and the American way. And again, our special thanks to our navigators, the helmsmen who make this show possible. Again, they do the hard work behind that microphone and behind the big board. To Tony and Bill. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And let's all remember, what are we thankful for as we move into the holiday season? And let's help out those that are less fortunate than us. Blessings, peace and happiness, and clear skies. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.